Hi, I'm Niel. The title of my talk, actually, that's the tagline of the school I have in Quezon City. I'm not really what you would say a creative like most of you guys here or like the other speakers before you. I'm gonna speak more from the entrepreneurial or from the business side of things. Um, Many people would call me serial entrepreneur from my introduction a while ago. This is the EduSuite, that's the company there, and that's the reason I got pulled into this talk because Zaika was my neighbor. She was working here, and yeah, I'll give a talk sometime this month. Many people would call me a serial entrepreneur because I started multiple companies. I'm on my fourth one now. But I would correct them. I would say that I'm not really a serial entrepreneur. I would call myself a passion entrepreneur. It's different because when you talk about serial entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general, what they would do is they look for opportunities. They would look for ways to make money out of the market based on what the market needs. Pero sa process ko, I do it backwards. That I actually look for what I'm passionate about the things I love to do, and try to make money out of it, how, and try to figure out paano ba ako kikita dito sa passion ko na to, dito sa business ko na to. Yeah, I was introduced with some of the companies I started. I was also, paano ba to? May laser pointer ba to? No. Oops. Sorry. Oh, there. I was also featured in a book here in the finishers. I'm not yet good enough to have a biography or my own book, pero siguro good enough to be a chapter in a book where where they talked about yan. That one, pareho kami may bigote dyan, pero I think the face is fatter in my caricature here than I am. Yeah, pero it talked about my journey as a game development entrepreneur. When I started kasi it was quite unique that there were no other game development companies in the Philippines back then. So I started as a programmer. That was a couple of decades ago when I started, because my first love really is in tech and programming. Back in grade school, high school, I started tinkering around with computers. More or less, no start, I was tinkering around because I wanted to cheat the games that I was playing. Di ba? Gusto ko ng extra lives, gusto ko na ma-maximize yung statistics ko. So I would like go into the game, configure their cheat files, configure their save files para pag start ko ng game, maximum na kaagad yung stats ng characters ko. So that's how I learned to program a little bit. Tapos I started, and then after that, I started reading yung, what do you call that? Game development for dummies. So, yeah, so I consider myself a dummy back then. That was back in college. Pero when I started going to business naman, I was talking with Alexa a while ago, and she was asking if I'm still the creatives behind the brand. So I took the other route. Na I started being more of a CEO and president than actually dealing with the creative side of things. So as opposed to Ian, kanina, who was here, that he focused on the creative side of things, I'm the one who focuses on the contracts, on the other things that need to be done to run the business. Yan, I took up, so sabi ko nga sa kanya, kay Alexa, I haven't actually programmed in the past 10 years. So that was yan, in De La Salle University around 20 years ago. And this was my first venture. So like Ian, I started early. Delayed student din ako. So okay lang din ma-delay. Delayed student ako. Pero what I found out was when I was in third year college, I had a lot of time. Most of my time was, kasi in computer science, most of your classes are in the morning, tapos in the afternoon, you spend it to do your projects. So I find that, I'm not really interested in doing most of my projects. So no first year, I tried getting into part-time work. I tried being a teacher. I tried student council. I got bored with it. Tapos after a while, I went into business na sa third year of college. This was at the time na video editing was still analog for those na siguro for those a little bit my age, maaalala nyo yun, what video editing was all about. So for the younger ones na hindi alam what analog video editing is, hindi naman yung ginugupit yung actual film. Baka yun yung akala nyo kasi yun yung nakikita nyo sa documentaries. Actually, when you say analog video editing, there were like recording boxes. So you'd press play, one video, so a VCR or Betamax would start playing, and you'd press record in the other. So play record, sasabay niyo yun para buuin yan. That's how you do yung cut-to-cut editing. So at that time, personal computers were getting more powerful, and personal computers were being used to do editing in professional studios. Pero for most of the students, they didn't have access to that. Actually, a lot of my batchmates went to Makati to have their videos edited because there were studios in Makati that did that. And the prices were really expensive kasi these are the same studios that did video editing for the TV stations, for corporate videos. So I sort of parang identified na why do they have to go to Makati? I'd set up my own video editing studio right here in Manila. I was living in front of LaSalle. So in LaSalle, there was College of St. Benilde right beside it, and behind us was Saints Co. So I think it's still the same now, no? So sabi ko, if I set up a studio here, I'm gonna be the only one doing video editing, so we could monopolize the prices yan. sa video editing. So if in Makati they charge 500 pesos, I can charge per hour of editing, I would charge 450 pesos. Hindi pa kayo magko-commute per hour. So we set up editing studios. I did it sa isang sulok ng apartment ko. So I had a, I think 35 square meter apartment that I shared with a roommate. Tapos at the start, we had 1/4 of that room dedicated to video editing, put up dividers, and set up the editing bay there. Tapos palitan kami. Siya nag-edit, ako natutulog, and vice versa. I took out a loan at the start. I think it was something like 120,000 pesos to build my first rig. After 6 months, I was able to pay back the 120,000 pesos. These were from family and friends. Ano? We loaned that. After I paid back the 120,000, uy, may credit history na ako. Can I borrow 250,000? So I set up a second editing studio. So now, half ng room namin was video editing. Medyo maliit na lang yung living space namin. It's like, ginawa na namin pull-out bed. Tapos, I think it was still me and my roommate doing the work. So there were times that parang 3 days na, wala akong tulog kasi papasok ka sa school sa umaga and then at the night you were working. So when you get back to school after 3 days, parang you'd see, parang totoo pala yan, you'd see stars literally floating if you haven't slept for 3 days. So I was sleeping in class. Ginigising na lang ako ng teacher ko after class. So it came to a point that kasi nga maganda siya and we were the only one there. Na parang the entire apartment actually became a video editing studio. So ako yung na-kick out sa sarili kong apartment. I had to find a new apartment. We can't move the studio kasi people already know that they want to go there to look for video editing services. So after a while, it grew successful. I think I was running it for 2 years. Pero when I graduated college, finally, after 5 years, I gave the business away sa brother-in-law ko. It took him a couple of months until he ran it to the ground, until nagsara siya. So sayang, di ba, when I gave it to him. Pero after graduating kasi I wanted to move into a career that I was more passionate about, and that was in video games. That's when I started yung game development company. I needed to have focus with that. I can't do it on the side kasi if you wanted to be successful in something, you have to focus on it. So a couple of lessons learned when I was running my own business is that I took up computer science. In computer science, you didn't even learn business math, you didn't learn accounting. So what I did was, I'm dealing with these new things, diba? You have to know a couple of the other terms that they didn't teach you in school. So one of the first things I did was, how do I read these financial statements? How do I read these balance sheets? I had to take up accounting for non-accountants. That's a 3-day course, parang game development for dummies, to learn how to read financial statements and to know if you're actually being profitable or not. So may sariling self-study. So I had to learn accounting, and as I learned when I gave it away to my brother, you also need to learn yung succession planning. So it stays there forever, even if you're not there anymore. So after that, I moved into my second business. I think at last, yung when we finally moved out, the last loan I took was mga ₱500,000 na, and we converted it na, naging like video editing studio na yan. So I took whatever savings I had, whatever parang profits I made from that business, and started my own game development company. That was back in 2001. So you can guess my age from that number when I started game development. That was right after college. The reason I started a game development studio, it was more or less by I was forced to do it kasi I wanted to go into game development. Pero there were no game development studios in the Philippines. So if you want to pursue that career, you have to go to Japan or the US or Canada to go to game development. I was nationalistic. I want to help the Philippines. So if I want to, if there's no other game development studio here, might as well, I'll start it myself. Medyo ambisyoso. Yan yung nangyayari if you're young and mayabang, ganun. I'll start game development in the Philippines, which was sort of what happened. So when we did it, when we started, I remember it was November of 2001. The plan was that I take my savings from the post-production studio. I'll stretch it to a year. I'll do the development of over a year. So we had a team of mga 7 people. So syempre, game development, it's more or less a question about how many people yung kailangan mo pasweldohan over how long before you actually get to finish the game. So within a year, find a publisher, get the publisher to distribute your game worldwide, make money out of that, and use it to fund yung mga future content and development mo. So that was the plan to do games. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. Actually, 1 year stretched into 2 years. So we ran out of money after 1 year. We had to find a new source. The game's not done. Actually, do you know the term na a game is never done? It just needs to get shipped, di ba? So kailangan mo na siya ibenta kasi wala ka ng pera. Pero yun, at that stage after 1 year, it was nowhere near something that we can release to the world. So it actually took us 2 years to do it. And finding a publisher wasn't really as easy as we hoped it would. If nakita niyo to, that's the name, no? Anito. Parang syempre, if an American guy would look at it, what's Anito? Ganun. Diba? And tapos you will show the mythology of the characters inside. They wouldn't get it because the mythology that they understand is about elves and dragons. And here we had like half horses in monsters in the game, diba? So it got a limited distribution naman. It actually got popular in some countries in Europe, for example. Trivia, it actually made more sales in Russia than it did in the Philippines, even with a lot of parang publicity that we did locally. Pero at the end of the time, after we released the game, initially we had a very good reaction, medyo above average rating in Metacritic. Sa game sites, parang we had high sales on the first few months. So sabi ka, ito na, we can use it to fund yung mga future games namin. Unfortunately, what we didn't know at that time was that new content, it has a spike in sales. Tapos after nun, magte-taper off na siya, maglo-long tail na siya. So it wasn't actually sustainable. It didn't really make its money back in terms of the budget that we spent developing that first game. So at that time, we had to downscale our operations, and we also needed to pivot to a new kind of business, to a new business model. So the game naman actually did moderately well. Sabi ko, it got some positive reactions from critics. It actually won a couple of international awards. So this was, I think, we released it in 2003. I think this was around 2004, so that would make me mga 24 years old at that time. This is my much geekier 24-year-old self. Funny, nung dumating ako sa conference na yan, I arrived kinda late, so when I arrived on screen, this is called the Independent Games Festival, so kumbaga it was held on the same day as the Game Developers Conference. So kumbaga sa film, there's Academy Awards in Cannes, so ito yung parang Cannes, pero they hold it at the same venue as yung Academy Awards of game festivals. I arrived late. When I got to the stage, they were already calling my name because we won Audio Innovation in Audio Award. So when they were calling my name, I quickly went up the stage, grabbed the trophy and the and the price, and then went down. I didn't know na I was supposed to make a speech. So nalaman ko na lang nung yung next guy na tinawag after me. And I didn't even prepare a speech when I got it. So medyo shy ako ng time na yun. And I was facing like thousands and thousands of people in a awarding ceremony. Another thing was when we released in 2003, I think we retailed it for something like 750 pesos. After a while, we were getting calls from people needing support because their games wouldn't work on their PC. So sabi nila, ayun, I tried installing it, it wouldn't boot, or my error message. Parang tinatanong namin, where did you buy that game? Where did you get it? Sabi nila sa ilalim ng tulay for 100 pesos. So, so they didn't know that the copy they got was pirated. So actually, I don't know yung final estimates namin, pero the pirated copies were outselling the original copies like 4:1 ata eh. So, yun, piracy is bad. Sasabihin sa inyo ni Edu Manzano ba yan? So, pero it was also cluttering up yung support lines namin. So I guess, lessons learned at that time. Yun, if you're gonna go into creative content, people, well, I'm optimistic. If you're an optimist, people actually think na kaya ko yan tapusin in, di ba, sabi ni si Cookie ba yung kanina, kaya yan tapusin isang buwan, may album ka na. Pero sa amin, kaya namin tapusin in 1 year, 2 years later before namin na-release. So it actually costs more than you would think it would cost. It actually takes a lot more resources and funding, especially if you're the creative type and you're never satisfied with the work that you do. Parang it will take longer and longer than what you think it would. So, yun, plan for, yun nga, di ba, parang hope for the best, plan for the worst. Another thing we learned is not because we were winning awards internationally for the game that we did, it will translate into money, it will translate into success for your game. One thing that we failed to do when we did the game was we had its own idea, and it's siguro it's common among a lot of creatives, di ba, na you're so in love with your own idea that you fail to see the market realities, di ba? You fail to validate na itong idea ko, meron bang bibili nito, di ba? Meron ba akong magiging customer? So they just release it in the market and hope na it actually works out. Pero sa totoo, if you're gonna create content, sometimes it's better that you test the market first, di ba? You study the market first, research the market, you validate that people will actually purchase your content, di ba? Do trial periods before you actually go full blast into developing the game or whatever content that you want to do. So at that time, that was back in 2004, we had to scale down the company. We went into outsourcing. So outsourcing means that we no longer create our own content, pero we actually also create games for other people. So I think over the course of 12 years, we've produced something like mga 70 games total. I had at one time when at our peak, I think we had mga 65 something developers in our studio. We were actually the largest game development studio in the Philippines back then. Yung mga customers namin, we were doing work for, sino ba gamer dito? Can I get a show of hands? Sino alam yung like Electronic Arts, mga Activision, ganon. So they were our clients, we were making games for them. We also did work for, sa mga non-gamers, we also did work for Disney, for ESPN, for some of their brands, like yung mga Winter X games, their Little Pet Shop games, a couple of movies like mga Spider-Man 2, mga these were mostly outsourced work, Tapos, pero at the start, we didn't really get those coveted brands kaagad-agad. We actually went into yung what we call mga serious games. Serious games, they're a terminology na using game development technology for non-entertainment purposes. So this was for architecture. We used also game technology for industrial design, other types of work that we did then. Kasi yung competition in this side is not as tough as it is trying to release your own, di ba? Some people would say, I would like to make the next World of Warcraft or Battlefield or whatever. Pero sometimes kasi it's too ambitious or it's too unrealistic for a small studio with limited experience and limited budget to immediately compete with those big brands out there. So I guess yun, key learnings na nakuha ko doon. We actually had a full spectrum of competition. So I think parang masasabi nila the sexier a business is or the sexier a career is, the tougher the competition actually is also. So in the end, we actually settled with what you call mga casual games. So when I say casual games, these were either games for kids, yung mga pet games nga na sinasabi ko, Facebook games, and mga games for moms. So yung mga, when I say games for moms, mga ano, uh, yan. Sino ba naglalaro na ano, Candy Crush, ganun. Yeah. Actually, sige, wag mahiya, walang ano to, walang hiyaan. Whoever played Candy Crush here, Candy Crush. Ganun. So, wag mahiya mga lalaki, I think it was only like 70% female that played that. And most of them were, I think, over 35 years old. So, so that's why I said games for moms. Tawag namin soccer moms. That's the market that we studied whenever we release games for that market. So yeah, the sexier a career is, the tougher the competition. So fast forward, we went through ups and downs as a studio over 12 years. So I think over 12 years. Ang game development industry is tough. Like every year, there's a new technology. Diba? Parang suddenly, Facebook games, the next year, Nintendo DS, after nun, Wii, ganun. So you have to study new and new. And if you place your bets on the wrong technology, may ipit ka. So parang nagsiso kami, parang it's like a wave going through that 12 years of game development. Pero eventually, we settled in. We were doing casual games, tapos I got an offer for someone to purchase the company from me. It was a company based in Bangkok na yung owners is, you know, yung mga puti doon sa likod, mga Danish sila, who offered to purchase the studio kasi they were expanding their line. Ang funny story niyan is, I think back in 2011, they were a new studio. Tapos, I was mentoring them. Magkatabi yung booth namin in a game convention in the US. Kasi every year, sabi ko, I'm no longer the creative. I looked for guys na mas magaling sa akin in programming. I looked for guys na mas magaling sa akin sa creative. Tapos, I was the one doing the business. I was doing like trips to, like I think 3 trips a year. Just to look for business for my company. Tapos yun, 2011, they were new to the business. They just purchased a game development company. Sila pa yung tinuturuan ko, oh, look at that guy getting meetings from Namco, from like the big boys in the game development industry. Tapos, oh, this is what you do, this is how to build your portfolio. And then 3 years later, they had 10 times more money than I did. Kasi, funny story, because they weren't able to get projects being a new studio, they produced their own content. So, trial number 1, palpak. Trial number 2, palpak. Trial number 3, I think palpak pa rin. And on the 4th try of producing their own content, I think they earned like $11 million out of it kasi pumatok yung game that they did. Sa game industry, it's very hit-driven. Sabi ko nga ngayon, sexy business siya and the barrier to entry is so low. I compare it now to the music industry that, you know, everyone wants to be a musician but not a lot of people actually get popular for being a musician, diba? It's only the select few. So on their 4th try, they got a game na got in the top 10 in the App Store and suddenly they had all this money. And alam nila, they had this statistic that for every 10 games we do, only one of those need to be a hit and they'll be able to fund the next 10 games. So they needed to produce the next 10 games fast habang yung trend is still there. So they were looking to expand that studio. They looked for the best studio in the Philippines and I got an offer to buy the company from me 2014. Sabi ko, sige, nakakapagod na rin after 12 years of running game development. I wanted to go into something else. So they acquired our company. Yun, so when they acquired our company, okay naman kasi on both sides, how much time do I have? I don't know actually. Okay, I'm like 1/3 through my slides. Kasi I'm trying to fit 20 years into these slides. So so yun, so yun, when we got acquired, they were testing us, ano? So we had to do mga game development exams for them, create a game in 3 days, and at the same time, I had to parang make sure that there was a cultural fit. Kasi the reason I started game development in the Philippines was I wanted for the creatives to have a career path when they graduate, for them not to go abroad. So sabi ko, ang mission ka talaga rito, ang vision ka talaga is for these guys who graduate, the talented guys who graduate from college, to get a good job in a game development company. So I wanted to make sure that that vision still remains intact. So I had to make sure na, there's cultural alignment. And fortunately, since they were Danish, they gave a lot of benefits. They actually upgraded all our workstations. Naging like 29-inch max na yung ginagamit namin. Tapos we have like free food everywhere, parang Google, di ba? Free drinks in the office. So it was a good fit. Sabi ko, sige, I can leave this company now. Pwede ko nang in-hand off dito sa next owners. Hindi ko lang alam, after I left, 2 years later, ginawa na nilang e-casino company yung, yung game development. So nandiyan pa rin siya. It's actually still a big company now, pero iba na yung kind of work that they do after I left. So yan, I'll rush through this because I don't have a lot of time. Pero yan, another thing is, I actually did it wrong. I was forced to get into game development, pero because I don't have a choice, pero if I would do it differently, I would have had gotten experience first before founding a company. I wouldn't have done it right after college because there were a lot of mistakes that cost me a lot doing it. So, yun na nga, I'd like to ask this question sa inyo. Di ba, you've heard about like Bill Gates, di ba, Steve Jobs, the guys who started companies young and made it, sila Michael Dell, as a popular entrepreneur. Pero I would like to ask, what do you think is the average age for a successful entrepreneur? Who would say mga 20 to 29 dito? Well, yan. Yeah, yun yung mga Who would say mga 30 to 39? 40 to 49? 1, 2, 50 and above? Wala. And sino nag-aantay lang ng may magtaas ng kamay, sasabay sila? Yeah. According to MIT, it's actually 42. So people really get a lot of experience before going into it. So I got 2 guys that was correct in this. People think it's a lot younger kasi there's these prodigies, di ba, who started right out after college. Pero they're more the exception. If you're as intelligent siguro as Bill Gates, go ahead, you can do it. Pero for the average CEO, it's actually 42. And if you look at the best companies, the companies that grow a lot within the first 10 years, it's actually much older, 45. If you look at Silicon Valley founders, it's actually 47. So, yan, people get a lot of experience before. Yung wisdom kasi, that's something that you don't have when you're much younger. Sige, bilisan ko na. I started a school because the guys we were recruiting weren't passing our exams. We were processing something like 300 applicants on a monthly basis, and we're only able to hire mga 1 to 3 because they graduate computer science but they can't program. They learn fine arts pero they don't know how to use yung mga Adobe back then. So I started a school because they were approaching education wrong. Parang like I found out kasi yung guidelines for people to teach programming is may master's sila in computer science. Pero if you test the masters in computer science, more than half of them can't even program. So, di ba? It's hard getting graduates out of that. So I wanted to change that. 2008, I started a school. I would talk a little bit about finding the right partners. Medyo kinover na namin. Kasi in my first business, I didn't find the right partners also. The vision wasn't aligned, like sinabi ni Ian. That's very important. The vision wasn't aligned. So when everything's good, it will go well, diba? They'll stay. Pero when everything doesn't go good, when the going gets tough, nagsisialisa na yung tao. So like out of 7 partners, 5 of them left me after like within 5 years of the business. So I had to buy back their shares. That was a challenge kasi we didn't have enough money in the bank for buying back their shares. So ngayon, when I started the school, I made sure that I found the right partners na. And at the same time, made sure na, alam mo yun, each and every unaccounted for detail, whenever something goes wrong, it's also put into an agreement. We call it a shareholders agreement. So even something like when someone dies, what happens, diba, who do the shares go to, which actually happened to us. One of the original 5 partners passed away a couple of years ago due to cancer. So even like, mga pag-anak nila, 2nd generation, 3rd generation, we put that into the agreement to make sure na walang away. Diba? It's all in place whenever you start a company. So we grew that business naman, yung CIIT. People started realizing that this school, right now we're at parang yung last batch of graduates namin, which graduate 2 months ago, 80% of them have jobs already. Traditionally, in the past year, we had 100% job placement. More than half were getting job offers before they graduated college. We invested a lot into SEO and digital marketing. We invested 10 years before the competition did. Well, most competition wasn't even investing until now kasi di ba nagpapatakbo sa kanila mga brothers and madre na hindi marunong sa digital marketing. So we invested 10 years earlier. We're #1 parati sa Google when you type up our courses. So we got like 500,000 impressions ata or visits on an annual basis. And the school started growing. So yung nakita nyo kanina, we bought this building. And we just opened 2 new buildings this year. So this is, has anyone seen this building sa Kamuning, Quezon City? Medyo natatago. We just launched it this week. We had an opening last Thursday to open this new facility. So this one is able to handle 800 students. Our other campus has mga 350 students. And we got a muralist to paint like the tallest mural on the side of the building, I think, in the Philippines today. So I still need to verify kung totoo yan. So ito yon before namin i-renovate. Sabi ko, konting pintura-pintura, pako-pako. Gagawin na namin yan. Siyempre, in-underestimate na naman namin yung effort that it takes to do a building. It will cost double. Sabi ko na, it will always cost double what you think it will. So it did. Still learning, napuputol. So this one naman, once you grow an organization, it might not be as applicable to guys who are starting out pa lang, di ba? Yung important yung building vision, values, and culture. So medyo, sabi ko, solved na ako. Should I cut my talk na ba? No, I'll go on, content. So sabi ko, solved na ako. I started my own school. Parang I'm well off financially na. I sold my own company. Was able to, parang okay na ako. So after I sold my company, I stayed there for 2 years. Sabi ko, sige, I'll retire na. That was mga 2 years ago. Sabi ko, retire na ako sa business world. I'll travel the world like I did when I was younger. Nawawala na lang ako. So akala ko magpapahinga na ako nung time na yon. So I did a little bit of traveling, learned sailing, ganon, took up multi-sports. Sabi ko, oy, may oras na ako, padami na ako ng tattoo sa katawan. Pero that was the perception when para it's different. I have 4 kids. So when you have 4 kids, hindi mo na sila maiwanan sa bahay kasi you can only be away siguro at most a week at a time. Then you'll miss them. Then you'll go back to the house. So ang nangyari is instead of retiring, instead of traveling the world, I became a house band. So Niel, hatid mo naman sa eskwelahan, sunduin mo. Uy, konti na lang tinapay, mag-grocery ka naman. So yeah, nagtuto pa ako ng gardening. Tapos na-realize ko na I was getting bored when I started taking pictures of the food I cook, di ba? So ganun pala yung mga bata, pinipicturean nila yung mga pagkain nila kasi marami silang oras. So sabi ko, uy, ako na rin, pinipicturean ko pagkain ko. So sabi ko, I need to get a new job. And that's why I started my 4th company. Kasi yung school, it's still growing. It has like 1,100 students now. Pero it's in Quezon City. I live sa Cavite noong time na yun. So I can't be hands-on in management. I was only involved in board meetings. So ginagawa ko, I was having a beer in a co-working space in the middle of the day. Ganun pag wala kang ginagawa, you're having a beer in the middle of the day in a co-working space. Studying the educational market kasi problema sa education naman, the software is really bad. I mean, a lot of you guys studied locally, di ba? How was the enrollment experience? Yeah, really bad, di ba? You would say. Kasi pangit nga yung software that's available locally. So I wanted to solve that. And I wanted to solve the problems of all other schools. So that's why I started a company called EduSuite, which is there with a couple of, yan. Yeah, that one, that door there. I started it last year. So to solve that problem naman. So sabi ko, after 6 months, retirement's not for me. I need to work again. If you're busy, if you want to create, hindi option ng requirement tatanda ka lang na maaga. So yun, I wanted to build something new. So yun, it's different. I used to run things from the boardroom. Everyone would book the travels for me and everything. When you start your own company, you have to do it from scratch. So I did, di ba, sa bahay, I did the groceries for the kids. Pagdating dito, I did the groceries for my company kasi wala kaming assistant. So ganun din, taga-grocery. Pagpalit ng bulbilya, hindi, may receptionist na ba kami. Pero pag bili ng kape, kami pa rin yung gumagawa. So, yan, I'll go through this fast. Yan, I think one thing lang, we got funded by DOST, a government agency, to produce AI for the Kasi what we wanted to do was put AI into school management so the AI will do the management for the schools. So instead of someone doing the scheduling, mag-a-add ka ng subjects, mag-drop ka ng subjects, an AI would predictively forecast na how many students will enroll here so that it knows the exact number of sections to open for the school, and it will also figure out the best schedule even before the school starts. So yeah, I took all my lessons learned, finding the right partners, doing our market validation first, start studying the market. And I think one thing na I wanted to say lang kasi, at this time, at this day and age, you can get distracted. There's 1,000 things to do. There's, di ba, parang you want to do this and then something comes up and then someone proposes a partnership and then there's this new project. You tend to get divided and you tend to lose focus on what you want to do. Pero I think if you're starting something at this day and age, you have to figure out at the start is think with the end in mind, di ba? Sabi nung 7 Habits ba yun? So if you say na think with the end in mind, what's your most important metric? How would you say that you're being successful in a particular business? For EduSuite, I would say that it's the number of students that we get on the platform to subscribe to us. So it always goes through this filter, whenever someone proposes a new project or someone proposes an event. Will this help my business? Will this parang contribute to this important metric that I use to filter everything? If it doesn't, maybe it should be lower on your priority list. So you have to really prioritize yung OMTM means one metric that matters. Diba? What is that one number that you can look at that you would say that your business is successful or your studio is successful? Diba? Whether it's fame, wag naman siguro likes sa Facebook, diba? Pero it can be something like that. So yun, finding partners, this is us there. I also figured out na I'm not the best guy to do the tech for this business because all the tech I know is in the games and entertainment. So I found a partner. He's the CEO of another of the top Java development firm in the country. Sabi ko, sosyo tayo, let's start this. Tapos we have a couple of schools na under our pilot list. We launched our product less than 1 year pa lang. So we have mga 6,000 students subscribe. Our target is to have mga 10,000 students subscribe before the school year ends. So yan, begin with yan. Another thing is, the best products are when you are the customer. I think that's one thing that I would say was an advantage for me. Game development because I like games. School because I wanted to educate. Actually, my first job was actually being a teacher. I think I mentioned this a while ago. Pero I found out na I'm not really a good teacher. Parang mauubos buhok ko siguro if I stayed as a teacher. Kasi I taught remedial math tapos parang binubunot ko buhok ko pag hindi ako naiintindihan ng estudyante ko. So that's why I got into school kasi I wanted to do something in education. And yun, siguro final pabaon na lang. I'll quickly end this. Final pabaon. Running a company can be learned. It's not something I was familiar with at the start. I would say that at the first 5 years of my time, I was a pretty crappy CEO. Alam ko na crappy CEO ako kasi when the original team of my game development team have reunions, hindi ako iniimbita eh. So sabi ko, I must have done a lot of things wrong. So you can learn it through the years, how to learn it. So I even took a master's in entrepreneurship just to learn that. I also took a class, yung digital marketing, kasi when I started this company, I used to run it from the boardrooms. Increase mo yung budget sa pay-per-click ng Google Ads natin, gawin mong 400 pesos yan, okay na tayo. Pero when you start a new company, ikaw yung magkiklik-click. Paano ko ba i-click to? Paano ko ba i-raise yung budget? Hindi pala ako marunong, di ba? So I took up digital marketing, pero libre yung tuition ko kasi I studied in my own school sa CIIT. Tapos I also read a lot of books. Ngayon ang commitment ko, at least, I'm a very, very slow reader. At most, kaya ko 1 chapter a day. Pero kung traffic, nag-audiobook na rin ako. So I commit to siguro reading at least mga 1 book every 2 months. Pero I think this year naka-4 pa lang ako eh. So every 3 months yung yung nagagawa ko, 1 book every 3 months. And yan, these are my final slides. I think I'm still learning. And some people kasi when you start something, they always think about ano ba yung possible rewards or ano ba yung possible benefits nito, di ba? Di ba? Parang iniisip na nilang na malalalo sila loto, they'll be rich at the end of the year. Pero when you're in creative, it's not that way. If you want to pursue your passion, it's about the journey. It's about enjoying what you're doing. And when I say enjoying what you're doing, it doesn't feel like a job for the guys that do it. So kanina, I was there. I was actually working. Nagsascan ako ng mga contacts that I met at an event that I did yesterday. Galing akong Clark, dala-dala ko yung event kasi ako na naman yung we had an event, ako na naman yung salesperson for this new company, dalawa lang kami. So ako yung nagdadala ng TV, ganun. Tapos, I was even working even today kasi I have a lot of presentations. So it's all about enjoying the journey. And I'm also a fan of this popular guy called Gautama Buddha. Sabi niya, happiness is a journey. That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's open the floor to questions. Anyone? Questions? Questions? Guys?
Yeah.
Hello?
So I either explained
there.
everything or walang naintindihan at all.
Well, question lang po, what if the passion that you have for something isn't matching what the market needs?
It has to be a balancing act. Like sometimes it's not about finding. It's actually not just your passion. It's finding your passion. It's finding your strength also. Kasi it might be na you're really passionate about drawing, pero stick figure lang yung kaya mo i-draw, di ba? So hindi naman nagmamatch yan. And the third is finding yung market validation for whatever you're passionate about. And it's not always going to be completely aligned. Like the first game we did was actually an RPG single-player game that's bought sa stores pa talaga. Pero we found out na that's not really our strength, and what's needed by the industry are actually more casual games kasi yun yung nag-open sa market. Pero we identified na it's not really about the game that we do. It's about parang creating games in general. So we had to shift whatever we were doing into something like it. So I guess it's also a balancing act talaga. It's not never gonna be completely aligned to what you're passionate about.
Okay. Someone? Yes.
How do you do your market research? I mean, what is there a process in doing it?
It's actually a long process. Pero I guess the most important part of the process is validating whatever theories you have. So una-una, you have to find yung what's your idea, di ba? So validate that. Is there gonna be a buyer for this? Tapos after nun, you have to figure out the market size. How many people are in this particular market size? So like for example, when we did EduSuite, we looked at all the data from all the schools in the Philippines. Who are our most likely customers? Number one, it's going to be colleges and universities. Number two, they have to be private kasi pag public, walang pera. So yun, we narrowed it down to 1,600 schools that can be our target market. How many students do they have? We figured out it's 1.5 million people. Tapos out of those, we have to further, siguro, alam niyo yung BANT method, we have to, who are in the market right now to buy it, ganun. And that's when we figured out, this company can potentially reach mga between 1 to 2 billion target addressable market. If you get a 10% market share, that's gonna be okay na, mga a couple of 100 million annually. Ganun. So okay na rin. Aside from that, will they buy, di ba? So ano ba yung pain points nila? Ano ba yung hinahanap talaga nila? And at the end of the day, you wouldn't know until you actually produce trial content and you put it on the market. And you see what kind of reaction it gets. Will they be, will they offer their money for it? That's the final validation eh. Kasi you can ask people questions, would you buy this? Siyempre, pag nanay mo, sasabihin niya, yes, bibilin ko yan, di ba? Pero nanay mo yun eh, di ba? You have to put it somewhere na sila talaga yung target market na bibili mo. If it's apps, for example, we just put it on Google Play, put like 10,000 pesos to do digital marketing and try to figure out from the figures how many actually download, how many actually play through it for more than a week. So you have to put analytics there also.